G'day everyone, how's it going? So I apologise I haven't uploaded in a while. I've been pretty busy with life recently. I've been doing night school 2 nights a week, Cert 4 in hydraulics and pneumatics. As well as that, just been camping and doing a whole bunch of other fun stuff, and yeah, just trying to live as best life as I can right now. But enough about me. We'll get into the nitty gritty of this video and the reason why everyone's here. So the reason everyone's here is you guys want to learn how to tune your Bosch mechanical injection pump, the VE style type, with the boost compensator bolted to the top. Before we talk about the pump in detail though, I just want to talk about how diesel engines differ from petrol engines, just because there's some important information you should probably know before you start tuning yours. So diesel engines, unlike petrol engines, they do not trigger their combustion event with a spark. What they do is they will crack open an injector right as the piston's coming to top dead center, spray in an atomized spray of diesel fuel, and the high compression ratio of the engine will have heated the air up to a point where the atomized spray will self-combust as soon as it's sprayed into this extremely heated environment. So because of this, diesel engines tend to have much hotter exhaust temperatures. This is also due to the fact that they rev lower and they flow less air to draw heat out of all of the components of the engine. The thing about diesel engines, which makes them much more simple to tune and operate in comparison to a petrol equivalent, is the fact that all you have to do is modulate the amount of fuel going into the motor. A petrol engine has to modulate both the amount of air with the throttle body, as well as the amount of fuel, and then as well as the spark event and its dynamic timing relating to the revs and the throttle position and the boost and so forth. Diesel engines though, older ones at least, don't have throttle bodies. All they do is push air into the engine, allowing that to get compressed and heated up, and then the amount of fuel is what's going to modulate how much power you're actually making. So if you're like me, and you've got an Rd28 and it's in a GU, so you've swapped from the electric injection pump to the mechanical injection pump, the first thing you need to do is get the car running, and the way you do that is you time the VE pump up in relation to the engine. So the pump sits on cammed out holes, allowing you to rotate its position in comparison to the engine, and what this does is it'll advance or retard the timing to the point where the advance built into the pump will match how it'll go through the rev range and the engine will operate smoothly and efficiently. So the way you do that, the proper way according to the service manual, is you bolt a dial indicator down the inside of the pump, inside of the hydro head. This will sit on the front of the plunger. You will then rotate the engine to a certain position. I believe it's number 1, bottom dead center. And there should be a reading on the plunger which will change as you advance and retard the pump. This isn't the only method, however. If you want to do the slightly rougher caveman approach, you can simply bolt your pump on, set it to a certain position, try and start the motor. If it doesn't start, that means the pump is too retarded, and if it starts and sounds really clackety, it means it's too advanced. So all you've got to do is just start it a few times, listen for it, loosen the nuts off a little bit, not all the way, otherwise bad things might happen, and then just knock the pump back and forward with a soft blow hammer, advancing and retarding it until you can hear the knockety clickety go away and it's still relatively easy to start. But once you've timed up everything to ear, it should sound pretty good and you should have the setting pretty close to what the factory setting with the dial indicator should be. Alright, so the biggest thing you're going to need to tune your engine up is you're going to need an exhaust gas temperature gauge. So what this gauge will allow you to do is visibly see the temperature of the gases flowing through the exhaust. And this will give you an indication of how hot the combustion temperatures are, as well as giving you a sort of safety margin so that if you go over a certain temperature, i.e. 650, 700 degrees, you know to let off because you're going to start doing pretty severe damage to your engine after that. So with a diesel, when you add more fuel to the combustion event, you will in turn create more black soot or black smoke, and this will increase the combustion temperatures. So this is what you have to keep in mind, because if you run a diesel too hot, or if you run a diesel with too much fuel, you might make 2% more power, but you're going to do excessive damage to the engine, and yeah, that's never fun for anyone. So here are some videos that the last owner sent me, and you can see all of the soot coming out of the exhaust. This is pretty excessive. I would personally say you do not need to run like this. If you want to be a cowboy, that's up to you. I'm not fussed, but yeah, you're hearing from this from me now. This is not what you want to be running out your exhaust. Alright, so there's a video that I'd like you all to watch. It's the Cletus McFarlane video where they put their 12-valve Cummins-powered Galaxy on the dyno. In this video, it gives a good indication of what we're trying to achieve or what we're looking for whilst we're tuning our engines. So with this car, when they start the pull, you'll see instantly there's black smoke coming out of the exhaust. So what this is excessive fueling going into the engine and unburnt diesel or partially burnt diesel getting shot into the exhaust and making nasty smoke. But then as they get up past that into full boost, you'll notice that the smoke thins out into grey, almost see-through smoke. So why this has happened is because as the turbo's spooled up, there's a lot more air to match that oversaturation of fuel, making a leaner mixture and then making less smoke coming out the exhaust. So what we're trying to achieve in full boost is just a bit of grey sort of see-through smoke coming out of the exhaust. Okay, so I'd assume that most of the people watching this video, here for the Rd28 at least, will have done the swap from the electronic ETI pump to the mechanical GQ pump with the boost compensator on top. So once you've done the swap with your GU Patrol, rather annoyingly you'll notice that access to the top of the pump's almost completely obstructed by the top mount intercooler. You can still take the top of the boost compensator off and make adjustments, however you can't pull the fuel pin and diaphragm out completely, so it's better to take the top mount off. So there's spring tension held by the cap under here, so I suggest taking 2 corner bolts out completely and then slowly loosening evenly the other 2 corner bolts off evenly, and this will mean that the top cap comes up and doesn't pinch on one side and damage your diaphragm. So as soon as the top cap comes off, first thing you want to do is mark where the diaphragm is. See where it is marked there, pointing forward to the radiator. You can pull it up and you'll see it's connected to this boost pin here with the ground cam profile in it. And what you need to notice about this is it's ground eccentrically in relation to the diameter of the pin. So you see how it moves around left to right? So what you should go ahead and do is, as I've done with the yellow texture on top, mark the minimum and maximum cam profile gradient in it. Next we got the spring, nothing too special. Then you got the shim, the copper shim, and the boost wheel or the star wheel, whatever you want to call it. So I'll put together an animation to help everyone understand how all these components work together. So the first component that you've got, if you were assembling this assembly all together, is the boost ring. So this boost ring has a thread cut on the inside of it, and what this thread will do is it'll wind down to the inside of the boost compensator, and this thread means that you can position it up or down on the thread. This will allow you to add or remove tension on the spring that sits on top of it. Then next goes in is the spring. Then we've got the diaphragm. Then you've got the fuel pin, which is fastened to the diaphragm via a bolt. I haven't included the copper shim in this, we'll talk about that later on. So when you're driving around, you'll make boost pressure. There is a boost manifold reference to the top of the pump, and what will happen once you make boost pressure, you'll pressurize the top part of the pump, which is separated by the diaphragm. This will then press down, overcoming the spring tension, moving the whole position of the fuel pin downwards. Alright, now that we understand this, we'll see what goes on inside the pump. So what we know about the fuel pin is that once it gets energized, it'll be pushed down. So the next component is what I call the conveyor pin. So the conveyor pin is the slave component to the fuel pin. It sits on a drilled port that separates the inside of the boost compensator to the inside of the pump, which is submerged in diesel. And then the last component we got for fuel compensation is the reverse lever. So what this does is it limits the maximum travel of the throttle lever assembly inside the pump. Once boost is made, you'll see that the fuel pin will move down. This will allow the conveyor pin to move in and then hence allow the reverse lever to pivot, which will open up the gap of the maximum travel of the throttle lever, hence allowing more fuel into the motor to match the added boost or the added air from the turbo. So now that we understand that, what we're going to do is we're going to go for a drive and we're going to see how the engine is currently running without any changes made to the pump. So I'll go for a bit of a drive, I'll let this video play, and then after it's done, we'll watch it again and I'll talk over it and talk you through what's happening on the screen. So what you notice when I put my foot down and I start getting into boost, there'll be a big initial puff of black soot out the exhaust as you cross over into boost. This initial puff of black smoke will mean a sudden increase in exhaust gas temperature that's not very detectable on the exhaust temperature gauge, but what that means is it's a sudden spool up for the turbo, because the hotter the exhaust gas are, the faster the velocity, meaning you can actually sort of jumpstart your turbo's spooling by having a hotter exhaust gas as you cross over into boost. But what we'll notice is once we get up into full boost around 20 psi, the exhaust soot will thin out to almost negligible amounts. So what this means is we're getting a bit too much fuel as we start to cross over into boost and then a little too little at the end of the boost. This probably doesn't mean too much, the car's still very drivable, but what it means is there's less power being made right at the top at full boost. So what I'll do is I'll fiddle with the pump a bit to try and get this to change. So what I've done is I've removed the copper washer from my pump. So what this is going to mean is that the boost pin is able to come down more, meaning the conveyor pin can come in more, and the maximum amount of fuel allowed in by the injector pump is more so. So I'm hoping this will mean that once I get into full boost, there'll be a bit more smoke or a bit more power right up the top, but I may have to make a few more changes to the spring tension. So as you can see with the exhaust smoke, it has changed a little bit with the removal of the shim. This is still, however, not perfect. What I believe is happening is that the boost ring is too far down. What this means is that the boost pin is pushed down to its maximum travel by around 10 psi, and then anything over this boost level will see no more fuel gain because there's no more stroke left for the fuel pin to go down for. So how do we fix this? Well, first let me animate what's happening for everybody to understand. So right now the boost ring is down here. This means the spring is easily compressed at the start, hence why all the fuel is going in up to 10 psi of boost. So what I'm going to do is wind the ring back up to preload the spring more. This will mean that the spring is harder to compress by boost pressure, slowing down the amount of gain that the fuel is going to get relative to boost being made. As well as this, I'm going to rotate the fuel pin around a tiny bit. This will increase no boost fuel delivery and full boost fuel delivery. Alright, so this is getting to the point of where I want it. As you can see, there's a bit of soot to kickstart the turbo at the start, and then up top you'll have a little bit of soot, nothing too excessive. This isn't perfect though, I'm going to change around with it a bit. I think I'm going to wind another half turn of tension onto the boost spring, as well as rotating the boost pin a tiny bit just for a little bit more fuel. This is pretty close to where I want it. It's nice and smoky to start, and then it thins out nicely into nice grey smoke once you're in full boost. So, I'm finally going to address the elephant in the room, the fuel screw. The reason I haven't addressed this yet is because I believe that it's more important to understand how the boost compensator works before you start fooling around with the fuel screw, because I myself made the mistake of assuming the fuel screw was all you needed to fool with the pump. So the reason I say that is because when I initially got the engine running, the boost compensator was set to the very first pull I'd done, and what you see in that is that there's fuel when you cross over into boost and get up to about 10 psi, but as soon as you get up above that, there's no fuel and the car just runs lean. Now, when I'd actually first got it running, I didn't even have smoke coming out when it crossed over into boost. There was barely any. And what that meant was that I had no visible indication that there was no fuel up top. And this meant that I was losing power, or I was losing potential power I could have been making in full boost without knowing it, because there was no visible smoke for me to gauge that. So because of that, what I'm telling you to do is I'm going to tell you to wind your fuel screw up to give you that visible indication of how the engine's running, which is what I've been basing my tune off. Once this is all done, as you've seen in the last pull that I've done, Once this is all done and it looks pretty even, what you can go ahead and do is wind the fuel screw back out. A rule of thumb with the fuel screw is about 1/8 of a turn for each change, marking it each time with a paint marker or a scribe, up to you. And the reason you do that is so you can revert to the original position if the changes you made were undesirable. So I'm going to address again the smoke. With diesel smoke, if you're putting soot out the exhaust, you're probably making an extra 3% power than if you were putting out a tiny little bit of a grey puff here and there. The only trucks or the only diesel engines that need to be making all the black soot are trucks or engines being pushed to their absolute limit. So diesel drag trucks, as well as big industrial trucks. The older generations of trucks are the ones that you'll see making all that soot, whereas modern ones have such high-end equipment for emissions control, such as DPFs and diesel exhaust fluid injection, that you'll see nearly no particulate getting emitted from the exhausts. So in saying that, I'm going to leave it up to everyone's own discretion as to how much soot you want coming out of your exhaust. I'll leave the disclaimer here that any damage you do to your engine is not on my accountability. I've told you that it's bad to be making soot out the exhaust, and if you do, and your turbo decides to weld itself to the compressor cover, you can't get in the comments and say, "Oh, you told me to do that and you broke my engine," because I will murder your family. But anyway, I think that wraps up everything that I need to say. Everyone, please feel free to put information in the comments. The thing is, when you read information online, you'll read something on one forum, then you'll get on another forum, and someone will say, "Oh my god, why did you do that? That is the worst thing you can do." So the best understanding you can gain from any topic where you're learning it off the internet is just to read and listen to and watch as much information as you physically can. But I think I've covered everything I need to. I really hope everyone enjoyed this video. It was good fun to make. I made so many changes to the voiceover many times throughout its production. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you like it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more fun stuff coming out. There's some Hilux content coming up soon. And as well as that, a 500 subscriber burnout if anyone is keen to see that. So I'll leave everyone to it. Have fun tuning. Don't do anything silly. And I'll see you all next time.